Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up in just a few minutes in our Millennial Mom segment brought to us by OGPay.com, we are featuring the awesome Brittany Muddamalle. She's an influencer of sorts with a rather large social media following. She goes by the handle, The Almost Indian Wife. She's a life coach and she's trained in behavioral therapy and counseling, helping interracial couples go from surviving to thriving, a conflict guide of sorts. She's the founder of the Almost Indian Wife blog, a place for multicultural families looking to blend cultures and a place where parents are raising global citizens. Today, we are chatting interracial relationships and how interracial marriage is viewed differently than other racial issues, how to navigate the pitfalls and stay happily happy ever after. It all began to change in June of 1967 when the Supreme Court unanimously struck down an anti miscegenation law in the Loving versus Virginia case. Now, the case concerned the marriage between a white man, Richard Loving, and his wife, Mildred Jeter, a woman of Black and Native American ancestry. Now, the United States does have a long history of criminalizing, surveilling, and controlling Black and Brown families and the mixing of races. And so recently, the US House passed a bill protecting the right to same sex and interracial marriages, a vote that comes amid concerns that the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade could jeopardize other rights. 47 House Republicans supported the legislation called the Respect for Marriage Act, including some who have publicly apologized for their past opposition. The Respect for Marriage Act would repeal a law from the Clinton era that defines marriage as a relationship between a man and a woman. It would also provide legal protections for interracial marriages by prohibiting any state from denying out of state marriage licenses and benefits on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, or national origin. Imagine telling the next generation of Americans, that's my generation, we can no longer have the right to marry. Here to chat some more is the amazing Brittany Muddamalle. Welcome to the show, beautiful mama.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Congrats on all your success. Your family is absolutely beautiful. And
Aw.
you are the voice behind almostindianwife.com. And you've been published on multiple platforms discussing how families can navigate through multiple cultures in their families, in their
Yeah.
marriage and parenting. I myself read and also listen to you. You yourself are in an interracial marriage, and you and your husband Joel are raising these three boys, all under 5 years old. Tell me how it all started. What is your goal and how did you become so famous?
Well, I definitely don't consider myself super famous by any means. So, my husband and I have been together for about 13 years, which is just wild. It feels like it was just yesterday that we got together. But we actually have three little boys and a little girl. And honestly, what kind of happened is we just started to share our story. When we had first gotten together 13 years ago, there weren't a lot of other interracial couples out there sharing their stories, the ins and outs, the dynamics, and sometimes truly the complications and some of the backlash that you can face. And so I wanted to kind of create that for other couples out there. And so what I did is I just started very small. I started this blog where I just shared my stories, my experiences, my feelings. And through that, I was able to connect with hundreds of women and men at the time, and that has just gone on to just connecting with thousands of people across the world who are in the same stories and in the same situations. And now we have this other beautiful piece where we're even showing our kids and how they get to blend cultures. And obviously, we welcomed in our little girl. And so now it's just this whole crazy big family that we just share with the world.
I love it. You're a family of six. I love that you named all the boys with L, Liam, Levi, and Lucas, and now you have
Yes.
Amelia. I know.
Yep.
I'm telling you, I follow you. Um, so it's interesting because if you look back, Brittany, the Loving case did more
Hmm.
than make interracial marriage legal nationwide. It helped spark a
Yeah.
mini social revolution. And when a
Yeah.
Gallup poll first asked Americans about their views on marriage between Black and white people back in 1958, only 4% approved. But last year,
Yeah.
that number was 94%, an all time high, with
Wow.
93% of white people saying that they approved. So this dramatic shift represents a rare moment of racial progress that's
Yeah.
equally embraced by a vast majority of white and Black Americans and brown Americans, right? But it also begs a question that's rarely, if ever, asked. Why have Americans reached a consensus on interracial marriage when other racial issues like affirmative action and integration remain fiercely contested? What is your view on this?
Man, I don't know. I think part of it is just that we have social media now. We have these people who are able to just jump on and share their stories and share their lives. And so I think part of it is it's become normalized per se because they just see it more often. Right. If you go on social media, you're going to see all kinds of families that look different. And so I think that was a huge piece. But honestly, I think that people just, they love to fight and they love to just not get along. And so I think it's very difficult to get everyone on the same page. And I think one of the big pieces is even for myself coming into an interracial marriage, I had to step outside of myself. I had to learn about a whole new world, a whole new culture. And at times it's super uncomfortable. And I think sadly, like our society sometimes struggles with the uncomfortable bits.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you're 100% right. That's feeling uncomfortable is the number one reason why people don't want to participate in anything, right? If it's out of
Yeah.
their comfort zone, but for the most part, you're right. Any concerns about the durability of interracial marriage do seem far-fetched to most because it's so entrenched
Yeah.
into American life, right? And it's a big
Yeah.
part of it. Even advertisements today routinely depict interracial couples,
Yep.
straight and gay, along with their children, biracial public figures such as filmmaker Jordan Peele and NFL quarterback Patrick Mahomes. You know, they come to mind. But
Yeah.
advertisers are following dramatic demographic trends because people who identify as multiracial that increased by close to 275% over the
Wow.
last decade, according to a 2020 census. Talk to me about, and this parlays into what you do and what you coach.
Yeah.
What is the hardest part of being in an interracial marriage, Brittany?
Oh, man. Well, I think honestly, I think it's two pieces for me. I think that one piece is kind of again, it's this whole new world and you have to be open and you have to be willing to really step in and to try those things. But part of that is just like the communication within it. It's not saying like, oh, this is going to be easy because I don't think any long-term relationship is easy necessarily, right? Like it requires hard work. Like you work for things that matter. And so I think that's definitely part of it. And honestly, the other bit I would say is just people's opinions. I, as a white woman with a lot of privilege, I never understood the backlash that you could get for being in an interracial relationship or even being a minority. I'd never seen that. So when my husband and I got together, my eyes were just honestly like I was able to see this whole other experience. And so in general, we've had a lot of love for our relationship, but we've had a lot of pushback too for people who just don't understand or don't want us to go against the grain, even though, like you just said, society is no longer like that as much anymore. But yeah, I think that some of the complications that we face, I just didn't anticipate them, which made it even trickier.
Interesting. And well, of course, not anticipating it because, like you said, you come from this white privileged background and
Yeah.
who you are. Same thing for
Yeah.
myself. I'm a white woman, right? I'm Greek Christian, Greek Orthodox. My husband is
Hmm.
Jewish. So trust me, I know about backlash, just marrying and
Yeah.
combining the Christianity and Judaism. I'm not religious at all, but I'm very
Yeah.
spiritual. And that's how I
Yeah.
go about it. You know, I use tradition for both. I use respect for both
Hmm.
traditions. But how do you equip your boys to handle social criticism?
I think part of it's just confidence. I think that society tells us to fit in, be the same, follow the trends, do all the things. But I teach my kids the opposite. I'm like, be who you are. And that's from like little things to they bring Indian food to school, even though their friends are eating school lunch or eating peanut butter jelly sandwiches.
Yeah.
And so we start by little itty bitty moments to just say it's okay to be different. You don't have to look or behave like everybody else. And I think that as they're getting older, and we have obviously an 11 and 9 and a 7-year-old little boy who are in school, they're starting little by little to talk about their culture, to invite people in to say, hey, I brought Indian snacks, do you want to try? And even though in the beginning maybe it was uncomfortable for them, now it's their normal.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And how do you I don't know if you feel comfortable answering this, but how do you
Yeah.
balance religion?
Well, so one of the pieces with Joel and I is that we actually both share the same faith. And
Oh,
so I
okay.
do think that that's been really nice for us because we have some of those common pieces. But I would say differences in general, it's just communication and just remembering why we love each other. So even if we are different, that's okay. And that's what brings us closer together. And we're able to kind of blend all that together.
Yeah, I feel religion could become so divisive sometimes. That's why I choose to
Oh, yeah.
acknowledge it, but at arm's length.
Yeah.
And spiritualism is so much more important in our household than everything else. But
Yeah.
we practice Hanukkah, we practice
Yep.
Christmas, we practice it all.
Yep.
We have about a minute and a half left. What are some ways to handle conflict in your interracial relationship? Like, if you could just
Mhm.
say three things to to your listeners out there.
Yeah, I would say number one is intentionality. Don't wait for the problem, talk beforehand. Sit down, share your feelings, create that safe space together. Number two is give grace. You are figuring this out. There's no one size fits all or a perfect solution. You can figure it out as you go, and that's all right. Number three, just remember why you're doing it. Complications, conflict, differences, it's so easy to, like you said, be divisive and push you apart, but it doesn't have to be. So really focus in on why you're together, why it started, and I really think that can get you through a lot.
Without a doubt. Well said. Look at that. And just in a nutshell, we've wrapped it up. But to your earlier point, this is very normalized. I remember when
Yeah.
Ketanji Brown Jackson was sworn in as the first Black female justice on the Supreme Court. She did so while standing next to her husband, who was white, Brittany, and his race was
Yes.
not even noted in the stories on
I
her swearing
know.
in. And
Yep.
we have President Kamala Harris, VP, Kamala Harris, and former
Yep.
President Barack Obama. They're heroes to millions of Americans.
Yeah.
My political, opinions aside, in terms of what they stand for and who they are with their interracial and mixed families. But yes,
Yep.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was absolutely amazing, and you are incredible.
Thank you so much. I love chatting and hanging out with you today.
You're awesome. Guys, you definitely have to check out Brittany. Check her out on social media. That was our Millennial Mom segment brought to us by ogpay.com. Head to Instagram and follow her on her handle at Almost Indian Wife, or head to her website, almostindianwife.com. She is amazing and her family is absolutely beautiful. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.